All right, thanks for tuning in to another edition of OFN College Football Weekly with Mitch Slight of Athlon Sports on the Our Lads Football Radio Network for this Wednesday, the 27th of November, 2019. Happy Thanksgiving Eve to all, and happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend Mitch. How's everything going?
Everything's good. Got a few sick people in the household, but I'm I'm on the mend, so we're playing a little hurt today, but we're good.
There was an over-under last week on how many yawns you had on the air, and
Yeah, I sometimes forget the
you
cameras
you
on
d-
there.
I could tell you do tend to forget that, but that's okay. Content
Yeah.
is great as always, and we start these shows off with our Final Four playoff previews, as far as our predictions, I should say. And with Oregon going down, I have a new team in my Final Four. And I'm gonna go all out here, and it's not just because I'm gonna go all out. I'm gonna go all out because I'm actually confident about it, and I'm
Okay.
confident that Minnesota can
Ooh.
actually. I am real. I actually think they're gonna beat up Wisconsin on Saturday.
I would sign up for
Okay,
that.
and then let's put it this way: if Ohio State wins and they're in, fine, okay, undefeated, pressure. If they lose, vulnerability. Nobody's going to give Minnesota any chance anyway. So I just think this is a real solid Minnesota team. They've got the loss out of their system. I think they have as good a chance as anybody, and I think they're for real.
Yeah, I think they're very good. I did some digging in prep for the Minnesota Wisconsin game. I did some, dove a little bit deeper into the stats, and in Big Ten games, they are tied for Ohio State in the lead in yards per play. They're averaging basically 7 point yards per play in Big Ten games. Now their schedule hasn't been as difficult in the Big Ten games as Ohio State's, but that is still very impressive. We just had to get past those 3 games where they struggled non-conference, but once league play has started, they have been almost as good as any team in the country within their own league. Uh, so. Um, so I applaud that Minnesota pick. My pick right now is Utah. I think Utah is going to claim that
Yeah,
fourth
you're going
spot.
to stick, of course, with Utah, and there's no reason
Yeah.
for you not to. So I got LSU, Virginia in the Fiesta, Clemson over Minnesota in the Peach, and LSU over Clemson in the championship game. So what do you have?
I have. Did you say Virginia?
No, LSU over Clemson.
Okay. You
LSU
said
over
something.
Georgia in the Fiesta.
Okay. Okay. You said Georgia. You said Virginia
Oh,
earlier. I
did
got
I? Okay.
confused.
Clemson
Yeah.
over Minnesota in the Peach, and LSU
Yeah.
over
So
Clemson in the
I've got.
championship game.
Yeah. So I've got. I'll go. I think Ohio State's going to hold on to the one spot. So I'll go Ohio State, Utah,
So that'll
and
be
then
so if it's Ohio State, Utah, they'll probably play in the Peach Bowl, I would think, right? Because why would Ohio
yeah,
State
I
want
would
to go
say
out west?
right, and then LSU, Clemson, which would be fun. Both matchups would be fun.
All right, and who's your championship game?
Um, Clemson and Ohio
Who
State.
wins it all?
I haven't thought that far ahead. I go week by week. I go one
I
game at
know.
a time,
Come
one
on.
play at a time. But I know you're asking me, so I'll go. I'll say
All
Clemson.
right, Clemson over Ohio State. All right, let's start with the SEC. Georgia wins an ugly game over Texas A&M, but that's how Georgia wins football games. And the bottom line with their offense, they need Cager. Because when Cager's out of there, they got to rely on all the young receivers, and they're kicking field goals instead of scoring touchdowns. That's what really almost got them in trouble. Now they got to take on Georgia Tech this week. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But the SEC championship game, it's all set. Now it's about the playoffs. It's about Georgia making sure they beat Georgia Tech, and LSU making sure they beat Texas A&M.
Yeah, and I think LSU could survive a loss if got upset by A&M, or let's say LSU wins this game and loses to Georgia. I think they can still make the playoffs. Georgia, of course, cannot afford a loss. Even though if you think about it, let's say LSU second in the country and Georgia's fourth, and there was a close game in the SEC championship game. Like in theory, if you're doing a ranking, why would you think less of it? But that's not the way the
No.
playoff works. Obviously, if they lose that second game, they're going to be out. I think Georgia has no trouble with Georgia Tech, and I'm interested in the A&M game. See if A&M can run the ball at all on LSU. A couple weeks ago, obviously, Ole Miss goes for like 420 on LSU. A&M ran the ball better last week. Some of their young backs there. So if they can get some balance on offense, I think they can make
Yeah, they're a
a
17-point favorite at LSU. They haven't covered in their last 2 games, even though they've scored 114 points combined in those games. We've been talking about their defense as a weakness most of the season. And get this, they're here's a trend of the day. They're 1-15 against the spread in the last 16 games as a favorite of 13 or more in the final game of the season. So I know you like those crazy trends I throw out, even though
that one's pretty deep.
That is. This is a rematch of last year's 7 overtime win by A&M, the first time A&M beat LSU ever in their 8th attempt, and that 7 overtime game is the reason why we have the new overtime rule. So.
Yeah, and it's the first time they beat them since they've been in the SEC. They beat them before. They used to play a lot in the 80s and 90s when A&M was in the Big 12.
And by the way, what if? Okay. If LSU wins and then Georgia, let's just say, crazy, Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, and then Georgia beats LSU. Is there an SEC team in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think LSU would still make it.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's what I said in my scenario before. Your scenario would hurt LSU's resume a little bit because that'd be a loss to a Georgia team with a bad loss to Georgia. But I don't think it would be enough to knock off LSU with their resume today.
And Georgia Tech, this is a team that beat Miami in overtime, only lost by 10 to Pitt, only lost by 5 at Virginia. But Georgia's beaten Georgia Tech 9 straight on Georgia Tech soil. But Georgia has not scored more than 27 points in any game over their last 6, and they're a 28-point favorite in this one. They've also been outgained in their last 2 games, Georgia. But it looks like Cager should be available in this game. I'm not so sure I would play him unless I need to play him. Do you think they're going to win this game? I mean, do you think they're going to cover this game at 28?
Spread seems a little high to me, based on some of the numbers you gave. And I looked this up earlier. Georgia Tech's not scored more than 28 points in a game this season. They've averaged over 28. I think it was the last 8 seasons.
Wow.
So we knew there'd be an offensive transition. But it's there's been some growth.
Okay, the big one, Alabama and Auburn, and Alabama's a 3.5-point favorite. Redshirt sophomore quarterback against a true freshman quarterback in this Iron Bowl matchup. Alabama is just 1-3-1 in their last 5 ATS as a single-digit favorite. Auburn, meanwhile, is 2-1 straight up and against the spread in their last 3 at home against Alabama. Who are you going with?
I'm going with Alabama. Same similar concerns I've had with Auburn against good teams all year is the offense. I don't know if they can. Bo Nix's numbers against ranked teams. We've talked about it all year. I believe he's an under 50 passer there. Yards per attempt aren't great. I just think that Alabama. I know Auburn's defense is really good. I think Alabama's going to score enough points. I think 24 points wins this game, and I don't know if Auburn can score 24 points.
All right, I'm going to go with Auburn. I think that they are – see, unlike Texas A&M, you could say, well, one of these 2 teams, good teams, second level, maybe they're due for a win. I can see that, but that's why I'm taking Auburn because Auburn's better than A&M. So I just think this is asking a lot from Mac Jones going up against possibly the best defense in college football on the road in the Iron Bowl. So – I'll take Auburn in this one and say that they finally break through against big competition this season. And, a lot of people aren't happy with the fact that LSU is ranked number 2 and Alabama is ranked number 5. There's some conspiracy theorists out there about the reason LSU was moved to number 2 in the rankings was just in case they move Alabama into the playoffs. They don't want them playing in the championship game.
I don't subscribe to that. I think they could do that. I didn't agree with the move. You can clearly make a case to make an argument that Ohio State should be number 1. I don't think they did it for that reason. But
okay.
The people who think that I can't convince otherwise. So
Clemson is a 27-point favorite against South Carolina. South Carolina has in 10 FBS games. Actually, the lights are good. I like that. That helped. The 10 FBS games this year.
I got a game this week. I'm not in the office. I'm in my room. So you got to go with the.
You get what you asked for. 10 FBS games have not scored more than 27 points, and 6 times they've scored 21 or less, going up against a Clemson defense that has not surrendered more than 20 points in any game this year. That was the 21-20 game that they nearly lost to North Carolina. Clemson has won 6 straight this year by 315 to 58 margin since the North Carolina game, and they've beaten South Carolina the last 5 years by a 23-point margin.
Agree. I know you didn't make a pick.
I like Clemson.
I
like Clemson.
I know. See, no problem. I think South Carolina's offense has been sputtering. There's just not a lot of positive momentum in that program there. I think Clemson wins, and I think.
Yeah, I like the way Clemson's defense has really been underrated, how well they're playing. We'll see what they do against.
Yeah.
Look, it's not a top SEC team, but still, it's an SEC team, and I think Swinney knows, hey, I'm going to bury this team if I have to. Okay. And I think he knows he has to, just in case. Okay, Missouri and Arkansas. I'm only mentioning this game because 2 reasons. One, you got an interesting coaching situation. Barry Odom's job may be on the table, and Justin Fuente is the latest rumored coach. Seems like everybody's rumored to go to Arkansas lately. Justin Fuente is the latest in line. This also is your upset pick of the week. Arkansas is a 4-1 on the money line, and I like the pick.
Yeah, I just Missouri getting the news that they, can't go to a bowl. I could just see them being, not motivated at Arkansas. Yep. I haven't checked the weather. I can see it being cold and just not want to be there. So hey, what the heck there? And Fuente, I know his name's been floated out there. I don't see it. Virginia Tech to me is a better job because of the conference, the division you're in there, and the path is so difficult at Arkansas. I get it. It's more towards where the geographically where he grew up. He's from Oklahoma and all that, but I don't see it there. And Odom, I'd be surprised. He's kind of navigated that program through some difficult waters at that school in recent years. He's played linebacker there. He spent most of his career there. I think he gets another year.
I'm going to say Missouri's going to move on. I say they definitely move on if they lose this football game.
I could see that.
They've dropped 6 straight ATS this year. Missouri has. They're 0-4 straight up ATS on the road this year, including losing at Vandy, which is probably a reason that you took Arkansas. Like if they could lose to Vandy, they could lose to Arkansas.
There was a stretch in the late 90s where I think 5 straight coaches who lost to Vanderbilt lost their job, and the only reason it stopped is because the Duke coach, I think it was Fred Goldsmith, got fired, and the next year Vanderbilt beat Duke again. So as a first-year coach, obviously he didn't get fired. So that was not so much anymore. I know the Commodores are struggling this year, but it's not the end-all be-all that it used to be to lose to Vanderbilt.
Arkansas has lost 8 straight this year, including their last 5 by a 254-80 margin. Missouri's lost their last 5 by a 124-47 margin. And Missouri's beaten Arkansas the last 3 years, including 38-0 last year. You also, I'm going to put a 5-star on the game on Turkey night, Thanksgiving. A little bit more, about 26 hours from now. Ole Miss kicked off at Mississippi State. Ole Miss, we both talked about them, liking them last week. They're getting 3 points in this one. You're taking Ole Miss as your 5-star.
Yeah, the road team straight in this. I love the Egg Bowl. Underrated rivalry nationally. A lot of hate in that. The teams aren't necessarily nationally relevant, but the fans and the players hate each other there. And with the Moorhead rumors, I just don't see a lot of positive momentum at Mississippi State. Ole Miss has played they played okay down the stretch. Obviously, that LSU game, they rushed for 400 yards. I just think they're a young team. There's just a little bit more, a little more juice at Ole Miss right now.
Yeah, again, road team has won the last 4 years, so Mitch thinks they'll go 5 straight years. What is the latest on Moorhead?
Sort of the same news as Odom.
Really?
I think that it wouldn't be no one really knows. I don't see an old baseball coach. Sort of like the situation in South Carolina. I think former coaches have longer leashes, and I don't see them pulling the plug after 2 years. She made a mistake there. I think, we can talk about Rutgers. Like the Schiano marriage might happen after all. After that, the sides getting back together. But if that doesn't happen, I think for Mississippi State, it would probably be to see Moorhead go to Rutgers.
Well, it just shows you how bad the Rutgers situation is, that they could put Moorhead in their in the potential coaches that would take over the program, and he's about to be kicked off out of a program he's only been there over a little bit over 2 years. This is the second year, so
True. Yeah.
All right. Before we turn into the Big Ten, I also like Louisville over Kentucky. Cunningham's been playing really well for them the last couple of weeks. Satterfield's got them rolling, and Kentucky beat Louisville 56-10 last year, so there's some motivation for Satterfield. And I actually think Florida State's going to keep this Florida game close. They've actually played well without Taggart, so maybe there's something there. Bryles is still there, so that's important. And so I can kind of see this being a little bit close, but we all know Florida is the better team.
Yeah, I'm with you on Louisville. I like Louisville to win that game, and I like Florida to roll.
Rolling.
Actually.
Okay, let's move on to the ACC. And Virginia Tech, big blowout win over Pitt. They're going to be in Virginia on Friday at noon as a 2.5-point favorite in the huge rivalry in which the Hokies have won 15 straight, including the overtime thriller last year, which it really looked like there was no way Virginia was going to lose that game like 10 different times, and they still found a way to lose it. This is for the Coastal Championship. Virginia Tech's defense has been fantastic with back-to-back shutouts. Wow. A month ago, Virginia was probably a touchdown favorite in this game. So, I got to stick with Virginia Tech because I've been taking them recently, and they've been coming through easily for me. So I'm not going to jump off of them just yet. Virginia, I haven't been able to figure them out all year.
Yeah, I think the smart pick is Virginia Tech, but I'm going with Virginia. I'm going against conventional wisdom. Everything points to Virginia Tech. Like you said, the 2 straight shutouts. Hooker at quarterback has not thrown an interception in 110 attempts this year. He doesn't throw the ball much, only 13 times in the last 2 games, so they've been efficient and judicious with their passing. I don't know. I picked Virginia in the preseason. I'm sticking with them, sticking with the Cavs. I think they finally break.
And this would also be what? This would also go in the trend as far as a new team.
7 different titles, 7 different ACC Coastal
there
champs
you go.
in 7 years.
So maybe the side is on Virginia. Don't forget, Boston College needs a win for bowl eligibility. I think Pitt wins and Adazio's gone.
I agree.
Wake Forest is your 4-star. And, hey, props out to their kicker. What is this? I want to pronounce this kid's right name. Is it Skiba? Nick Skiba, record 32 straight field goals.
I saw that.
Yes, that is remarkable, incredible. You can throw it all out there. I'm a little bit worried that they're 0-5-1 ATS as a road favorite under Clausen, which they are here as a 3.5-point road favorite. But Syracuse 0-3 straight up ATS at home versus FBS Power 5 teams, and you're going against the Orange.
Wake has been so good this year when they're not playing a really good team. I know they have some injuries and stuff, but their losses have been, against. I know they lost to Louisville at home, but Clemson, and then who else they lose to? I forgot off the top of my head.
Syracuse. They lost to Boston College.
No.
Oh, wait, Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, yeah, when Virginia Tech to play well. So I just think, like I said, I think Wake's been feasting on mediocre to bad teams, and I think Syracuse is probably more on the bad mediocre.
All right, now Duke, no bowl. They're taking on Miami, and what a wow! I mean, FIU beating Miami. How about that?
Yeah, and the thing is, and they deserve all the credit they've been getting. Miami had actually played pretty well. Just want to confirm here. Yeah, they had won 3 straight at Florida State and then beat a good Louisville.
Yeah.
They had going. So that game was out of left field, but it just tells you every time it's happened for years. Every time that Miami band off.
Well,
or make us jump.
Well, what killed them were the 3 interceptions. That's Williams had a terrible game.
Part of the game.
Yeah. And that's what did it. North Carolina, NC State. North Carolina needs the game for bowl eligibility. They're a 9.5-point favorite. 9 of 10 FBS games this year for North Carolina decided by 7 points or less. But the only time was their Georgia Tech 16-point win, and they were a 9-point favorite in that game. And I mention that because that was the most points that they were favored this year. The previous high, which right now it's the highest at 9.5. So for whatever reason, get them at 9.5, and they can cover that 9.5, or at least that's what the small trend says. I think they'll cover it. North Carolina State has just not been a very good football team. They're 0-5 straight up ATS last 5. They've beaten them the last 3 years, so you know North Carolina wants this one bad for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, NC State limping to the finish line.
Okay, and let's move on to the Big Ten, and, of course, Ohio State, Michigan. There's so much to talk about here. Being a fan, it's kind of hard for me in a little way, even though I pride myself in not being biased, as you know, but I've gone against Michigan more this year than I've taken them. But I've also, when I went against them earlier in the year, it's because they weren't playing well. And they weren't covering, and it worked. Later in the year, I've gone with them. They've been covering. So that's the reason why, if I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, I've got to go Michigan here. It's not just because they're playing the best football that they played under Harbaugh. A couple other reasons. You've got an Ohio State team that finally stepped up in competition last week, and with a backup quarterback who couldn't throw the ball, they struggled to put them away. Ryan Day's never coached this game before. And here's the most important thing in my mind. Don Brown got lit up last year. He got lit up because Haskins was a passer first. That's all he did was pass the football. He couldn't run. Passer. When Ohio State had J.T. Barrett in, he did not have many problems, Don Brown. Matter of fact, if you look at it, in 2017, and the win Ohio State 31-20, Barrett was 3 of 8 for 30 yards and a touchdown, and he was removed in the second half because of an injury. They were trailing in the second half. Who comes in but Haskins and leads the comeback in the second half? Go to 2018, and go back to 2000. I'm trying to see what year that was. I believe that was the 30-27 overtime win. And I forget which year that was, maybe 2016. And in that year, Barrett was 15-32, 124 interception. And we all know that they won the game. It was very controversial with the spot and so forth. So the two games that an athlete played, Michigan was right there with them. When Haskins, and you look at Fields is not a Haskins. Fields is a Barrett. That's why I think they're going to do a good job on Ohio State's offense. I expect them to be able to shut them down in the way, and I say shut them down, but keep them in the game the way they were kept in the game the last couple of years. And with Michigan's offense, the best that we've seen it under Harbaugh, I think it's going to be enough to win this game.
I disagree. And I do so strongly, even though I hope you're right, just because I know they still can't win the division, but Athlon Sports, we picked Michigan to win top 5, so that would be, like our picks to be right. So, and it would also be fun to see Harbaugh win. I look at last week's game and think if Ohio State fumbles going into the end, and they fumbled twice in their own territory. I know they're part of the game. I can't excuse those away. Well, it's not close, and Penn State's not in position to come back and make them sweat in the second half. So I just think, I know Michigan's throwing the ball well. 750 games to bounce down on the rushing attack earlier in the year. I just think Ohio State all across the field is really, really good. You make some good points about Don Brown there, but I like Ohio State by 2 touchdowns.
And by the way, the great matchups to keep an eye on are some really good ones. You got to keep an eye on the top corner right now in the NFL draft is Okudah for Ohio State. Along with Arnett, another solid corner, will go up against those Michigan receivers. So keep an eye on that. Those are great matchups. And I also am very intrigued to see the John Runyon, Chase Young matchup, to see if Runyon is out there one-on-one, because that would be huge for Runyon. Even if he gives up a sack or two, if he kind of limits explosion plays from Chase Young, that could be big for Runyon, because what also helped Michigan's offense during this winning streak was the not giving the ball away. And if Chase Young strips Patterson a couple of times, especially if he does it early in the game to get in his head, that is where Michigan would be in big trouble. All right.
Yeah, he's obviously a key player in this game.
Let's go to the Wisconsin-Minnesota game. And Minnesota snapped their 14-game losing streak last year to become bowl eligible when they beat Wisconsin 37-15 to finally grab the axe. So they're no respect again. They're a 3-point dog in this game at home. I love it. I love the fact they're not getting any respect here. And like I said, I got a little bit of a feeling that they're going to win by double digits.
I like Minnesota as well. I guess that line escaped me. I did not even notice that earlier this week. They're a home dog. I like their balance on offense. Wisconsin's a one-dimensional team for the most part. Minnesota's a balanced team. I like their offense.
Michigan State and Nebraska need wins for bowl eligibility. The way Maryland's playing, Michigan State should have no problem in that game. You know what? I think Nebraska's going to get it done. I really do. They needed the comfortable win last week, confidence-wise, and Iowa doesn't blow anybody out offensively. I just got a sneaking suspicion that maybe Nebraska is going to have a big game on Friday, and even if they just win by a point, it don't matter. But I think they'll get it done.
Yeah, that would change the narrative of the disaster season if they go to a bowl game there, I think, a little bit. But I like Iowa at home. Iowa's won 4 straight. I think Iowa plays with the chip on its shoulder in this rivalry. Even though they keep winning, they get no respect.
And before we leave, the Greg Schiano mess is just an embarrassment for the program. I was very happy and pleased of all of the backlash that the university received, Pat Hobbs, the athletic director, received. And I know there's only a 1% chance that anything is going to change, but I'm.
But there seemed to be some positive momentum this afternoon that Schiano was willing to go back to the negotiating.
Well, that's
table.
why I was saying even mentioning 1% because I think the backlash is so much that it's almost like maybe this is a wake-up call for everybody involved, saying, guys, you can't screw this up. It would be a major disaster for the football program if you did.
Yeah, I mean it'd be a real downer for anyone but him. I mean, I feel bad for the next guy. I mean, obviously he'll be paid a lot of money and all that stuff, but it's a tough job that gets even tougher when you go in there after they didn't lure the guy that.
Yeah,
really
the only
wanted.
guy I think that really makes the most sense is probably Michigan's linebacker coach Campanelli because he was a Rutgers guy and he knows the area. So.
Yeah, I saw you tweet that the other day. So I'll Rutgers search.
All right, Big 12 and Texas Tech. Texas is not the rivalry that we like to see from Texas A&M. Texas Tech can't go to a bowl,
right?
But Texas is a wounded team right now. And I'm mentioning this game because it's a Friday game at noon. I'm taking Texas Tech.
Yeah, I think Texas is a wounded team emotionally, physically. Everything about them. Bruised egos. Just not the season they wanted right there so far this year, and I like that pick.
Road teams won the last 5 years in that series. TCU needs to win for bowl eligibility. I'm sure they'll get it. And Baylor needs to win against Kansas to keep their championship hopes alive. We're going to get Baylor, Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship. I mentioned this last week, and we saw what Kansas did to Iowa State last week. Kansas, Baylor, they can make games close. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was a close game in the fourth quarter.
No, I agree. Kansas is, they have improved. I know they're going to 1-7, 1-9, probably in the league. But I was not a pro Les Miles guy, but they have gotten better. That win at Boston College was nice earlier in the year, and I think that they're showing signs towards not totally stinking.
That's okay. That'll work. What about Oklahoma State? You think Oklahoma State can keep it close? Oklahoma did not look good against TCU.
No, they've been flirting with disaster. Hurts is making some big mistakes there. Oklahoma State, backup quarterback Drew Brown. I know he's got a lot of experience from his time in Hawaii, but no Tylan Wallace there. Weird things happen. Oklahoma usually wins in this, but weird things happen. But I'll go Oklahoma to win.
Pac-12 and Oregon really screwed it up for the conference, losing to Arizona State. And, tough blow for the conference, but big win for Arizona State. We mentioned last week you got to watch out for Arizona State, and sure enough, they got it done. So it's Oregon and Oregon State. I just want to mention this one first because I can't believe I feel so bad for Oregon State. They had a 2-score lead with 4 minutes left in the game, and Washington State converted 2 fourth downs in the last drive, including a touchdown with 2 seconds left.
Yep, I mean, it's been a great bounce back year. I think Oregon State, along with Louisville, might be the two most improved teams in the country. Oregon State doesn't have as many wins to show for it, but they've been really good. Their early season struggles are probably going to end up preventing them from going to a bowl game, but that program is definitely on the right
But I'm definitely
footing.
taking the points here at Oregon State. They've covered all 5 games away. Let's keep in mind a team they almost beat.
Yeah, they've been better away team. They've been better.
They almost beat Washington State, who almost beat Oregon at Oregon. So I think this game is going to be a closer game than people think, and I also think Oregon losing gives Oregon State a better chance because I think those players are going to be. They don't. I mean, you can say what you want about the rivalry, but they've dominated this rivalry. They're a heavy favorite. They just lost their chance for a national championship. You can't tell me they're not going to be down this week.
Yeah, no, I think the emotions. It is right for Oregon State to play well. They have so much to play for in this game. Or Oregon, like you mentioned, they still going to be playing in a championship game, but they saw their national title hopes obviously die.
But we all know Oregon could wind up coming out, and Oregon State could be the team deflated after the way they lost last week, and Oregon could win the game by 40. So
trying to figure out these emotions sometimes can be difficult.
Utah's a heavy favorite, but give Mel Tucker and Colorado a lot of credit for beating Washington last week.
Yeah, they beat Washington. If you would have told me that Colorado would have wins over Washington and Stanford in weeks 9 and 10, and they beat Nebraska earlier in the year, I'd be like, wow, he's doing an amazing job. And he has done a good job there, Mel Tucker. But it's been an up and down. It's been an eventful season. I don't think they'll win this week, but those were 2 nice wins over named programs.
Since Utah's only lost to USC, they're 7-0 straight up ATS by a 263-61 margin. So I feel sorry for a Colorado team that's lost their last 3 road games by a 117-27 margin since beating Arizona State on the road in Week 4. Arizona State. Kevin Sumlin, is his job in trouble? Does he have something to worry about?
Yeah, I don't know enough about the dynamics there and what his situation, all that, but it's been a disaster this year. Just coach, the whole he inherits a Khalil Tate talent, like who's I don't want to call him a generational talent, but made numbers the year before someone there, and they've kind of wasted that. So there's not much positive momentum going on right now in Arizona. So I don't know if I haven't heard his name on too many hot. But that one wouldn't shock me if we saw that come out one day.
Notre Dame, Stanford. Notre Dame needs this if they want to go to the Orange Bowl. They're 16-point favorite. I kind of think Notre Dame might not be the bad pick because no Costello. The secondary is ravaged for Stanford. They've just had a ton of injuries this year that have killed Stanford. And Washington's a 7.5-point favorite at home in the Apple Cup against Washington State. They've dominated that series lately. What do you think about those two quickly?
I like Notre Dame, and I think Washington keeps it going. Their offense is struggling. Disappointing year there, but they've dominated that.
Liberty needs the win over New Mexico State for their 7th win, which would potentially get them into a bowl. Army needs the win either this week at Hawaii or next week against Navy for bowl eligibility. I mentioned that because of the independence. I might as well kind of segue that quickly into the Mountain West because congratulate Hawaii.
Yes, congratulate you.
Thank you very much for the – and you know what? They're doing it on defense. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story. Rolovich did a great job there in the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I don't even have it here. I was looking for it. But, yeah, Hawaii's defense has been fantastic lately. Boise State clobbered Utah State. So it's Boise State, Hawaii in the championship game next week. Boise State, yeah, we'll talk more about that next week. We don't even know who their quarterback's going to be because they keep throwing everybody around.
Right.
But right now, we already know who's in there. But Boise State still has the Group of 5 championship to play for. So that's big for Boise State.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they need to keep winning.
Yeah, because right now, Memphis is at the top. And Memphis, Friday against Cincinnati. Cincinnati is the East champs. And the winner of this game against Memphis will host the championship game. If Memphis loses the game, Navy could win the division and play Cincinnati at Cincinnati if Navy then beats Houston. So what do you think is going to happen? Because I think Memphis is going to beat Cincinnati, and I think they're going to cover.
Yeah, they've been on a roll lately. I think they've scored 42 points in all 6 games of their current winning streak, or at least 40. And Cincinnati has been flirting with disaster, beating some mediocre teams narrowly. I think Memphis at home is the better team, and I think they have.
How would you play this if you're Cincinnati, Fickle? Because you know you're going to get a rematch next week with Memphis. So don't you not want to show them certain things? But if you do that, then you're giving the game away and you're playing on the road, et cetera, et cetera.
No, I don't think any coach thinks that way. They won't. I mean, they. You could argue that they're not out of it for the New Year's Six either. If they win this and win this week and Boise State loses.
I agree.
So yeah, they're going to play.
All right, and by the way, Central Florida destroys South Florida to get to and then Charlie Strong's gone.
I would think so.
SMU Tulane. What do you think? A lot of key injuries for both teams. Both teams have struggled lately because Roberson's been out for SMU and the 2 running backs for Tulane have been banged up. You like Navy giving 8 at Houston?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And by the way, do you like Army against Hawaii because they need the game to get into a bowl, and Hawaii is preparing, I would think, for Boise State. So I'm not sure Hawaii's going to really care about this game.
I still go Hawaii, the better team. Army's been a little disappointing. I can't imagine at this point in the season them not preparing for Army, especially with that option.
By the way, your sleeper in the Mountain West Conference this year was Nevada. Congratulations.
Thank you. We both did well with our Mountain West.
No more
picks,
Bob Davey. He's done. And
Nope.
no more Sanchez. He's done. So keep an eye on those teams playing for their coach this week. Conference USA is very confusing, but I sent you, I don't know if you got that email. Apparently they changed the tiebreaker. So if there's a 3-way tie at the top in the division in the West, Southern Miss, Louisiana Tech, UAB, Southern Miss is going to get in because they haven't been to the championship game, whatever you would say, closer to the years as UAB and Louisiana Tech have. So because it's been the longest that Southern Miss has been there.
I thought they changed it. That was the original one, and then they changed it to the average of the power.
Yeah, they changed it again. That's why I sent you an email before, because they just came out with this late to let everybody know that that's the way they're going to go, and they're going to screw all the other tiebreakers, and that's how it's so. But look, I don't think it's going to matter anyway, because I suspect FAU is going to beat Southern Miss because FAU needs to win the game to clinch the East, and they're a better team anyway. And that knocks Southern Miss out. And then UAB, as long as they win, they beat Louisiana Tech, they're in. So I think UAB takes care of business, FAU takes care of business, and that'll be our championship game. What about you?
I'll go with that. I agree with you.
Keep an eye on Jack Abraham's banged up, too, for Southern Miss, the quarterback, in that one.
Yep.
So that's something to keep an eye on. In the MAC, the big one is Central Michigan on Friday. If they win because of Western Michigan's loss, they will play in the championship game against Miami.
Yeah, I mean, great job there by McElwain, former Tennessee quarterback, and Quentin Dormady. They done a job there, and they got a little help from
Lafayette and App State. That's the championship game. All set. The only thing to keep an eye on, Corey Sutton, the star wide receiver for App State's done for the year with an ACL.
Yeah, I love the way Louisiana's been playing all year. Billy Napier's done
a
great
job. All right, so we're going to talk a lot more about all these games and everything next week because the games come down to less than 15 games next week, I believe, right? Something like 10 championship games, something like that.
10 championship games, and
yeah,
I guess most leagues have. Wow, when not every league had championship games, teams would be playing.
Yeah,
but that's kind of that basically. Yeah.
All right. So we'll have time next week to kind of digest everything. Mitch, I appreciate it as always. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you next week. Take care. All right, that is it.
Okay.
You got it. Take care. For Mitch Slide, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next week here on OFN College Football Weekly.